The Monaco Grand Prix is a Formula One motor race held each year on the Circuit de Monaco. Run since 1929, it is widely considered to be one of the most important and prestigious automobile races in the world and, alongside the Indianapolis 500 and the 24 Hours of Le Mans, it forms the Triple Crown of Motorsport. The circuit has been called an exceptional location of glamour and prestige. The race is held on a narrow course laid out in the streets of Monaco, with many elevation changes and tight corners as well as a tunnel, making it one of the most demanding tracks in Formula One. In spite of the relatively low average speeds, it is a dangerous place to race and often involves the intervention of a safety car. It is the only Grand Prix that does not adhere to the FIA's mandated 305 km minimum race distance. The first race, held on April 14, 1929, was organized by cigarette magnate Anthony Noailles under the auspices of the Automobile Club de Monaco, and was won by William Grover Williams driving a Bugatti. The event was part of the pre-Second World War European Championship and was included in the first World Championship of Drivers in 1950. It was designated the European Grand Prix 2 times, 1955 and 1963. When this title was an honorary designation given each year to one Grand Prix race in Europe. Graham Hill was known as Mr. Monaco due to his 5 Monaco wins in the 1960s. Brazil's Ayrton Senna won the race more times than any other driver, with 6 victories, winning 5 races consecutively between 1989 and 1993. Fernando Alonso is the only driver to have won the race in consecutive years for different constructors, winning for Renault in 2006 and McLaren in 2007. History. Origins. Like many European races, the Monaco Grand Prix predates the current World Championship. The Principality's first Grand Prix was organized in 1929 by Anthony Noailles, under the auspices of Prince Louis II, through the Automobile Club de Monaco. Alexander Noailles, Antony's father, was founding president of the ACM, originally named Sport var Copyright Lossepa Copyright Dick Mona Copyright Gasque. The ACM made their first foray into motorsport by holding the Rally Automobile Monte Carlo in 1911. In 1928 the club applied to the Association Internationale des Automobiles Clubs Reconnus, the international governing body of motorsport, to be upgraded from a regional French club to full national status. Their application was refused due to the lack of a major motorsport event held wholly within Monaco's boundaries. The rally could not be considered as it mostly used the roads of other European countries. In order to retain full national status, Noailles proposed the creation of an automobile Grand Prix in the streets of Monte Carlo. Noailles obtained the official support of Prince Louis II. Noailles also gained support for his plans from Monegasque Louis Chiron, a top-level driver in European Grand Prix racing. Chiron thought that the topography of the location would be well suited to setting up a racetrack. The first Grand Prix Automobile de Monaco was an invitation-only event, but not all of those invited decided to attend. The leading Maserati and Alfa Romeo drivers decided not to compete, but Bugatti was well represented. Mercedes sent their leading driver Rudolf Caracciola to drive a Mercedes SSK. Caracciola drove a fighting race, bringing his SSK up to second position at the end of the race, despite starting in 15th. The race was won by Williams driving a Bugatti Type 35B painted dark green. Another driver who competed using a pseudonym was Georges Philippe, the Baron Philippe de Rothschild. Chiron was unable to compete, having a prior commitment to compete in the Indianapolis 500 on the same day. However, Chiron did compete the following year, when he was beaten by Rena Copyright Dreyfus and his Bugatti and finished second, and took victory in the 1931 race driving a Bugatti. As of 2015, he remains the only native of Monaco to have won the event. Pre-war. The race quickly grew in importance. Because of the large number of races which were being termed Grands Prix, the AIACR formally recognized the most important race of each of its affiliated national automobile clubs as International Grands Prix, or Grands Prix, and in 1933 Monaco was ranked as such alongside the French, Belgian, Italian, and Spanish Grands Prix. That year's race was the first Grand Prix where grid positions were decided, as they are now, by practice time rather than the established method of balloting. The race saw Kilvasi and Tazio Nuvolari exchange the lead many times before being settled in Vasi's favour on the final lap when Nuvolari's car caught fire. The race became a round of the new European Championship in 1936, when stormy weather and a broken oil line led to a series of crashes, eliminating the Mercedes-Benzes of Chiron, Vergili, and von Brauchitsch, as well as Bandrosimi's tipsy for newcomer Auto Union. Rudolf Caracciola, proving the truth of his nickname, Regenmeister, went on to win. In 1937, von Brauchitsch duelled Caracciola before coming out on top. It was the last pre-war Grand Prix at Monaco, for in 1938, the demand for a 500 currency and appearance money per top entrant led AIACR to cancel the event, while looming war overtook it in 1939, and the Second World War ended organized racing in Europe until 1945. Post-war Grand Prix racing in Europe started again on September 9, 1945 at the Bois de Boulogne Park in the city of Paris, 4 months and 1 day after the end of the war in Europe. In 1946 a new premier racing category, Grand Prix, was defined by the FAR copyright DAO Copyright Ration Internationale de l'Automobile, the successor of the AIACR, based on the pre-war voiturette class. A Monaco Grand Prix was run to this formula in 1948, won by the future world champion Nino Farina in a Maserati 4 CLT. Formula 1 . Early championship days, the 1949 event was cancelled due to the death of Prince Louis II. It was included in the new Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship the following year. The race provided future 5-time world champion Juan Manuel Fangio with his first win in a world championship race, as well as third place for the 51-year-old Louis Chiron, his best result in the world championship era. However, there was no race in 1951, and in 1952, a year in which the World Drivers' Championship was run for less powerful Formula 2 cars, the race was run to sports car rules instead and did not form part of the World Championship. Since 1955, the Monaco Grand Prix has continuously been part of the Formula 1 World Championship. That year, Maurice Trintignant won in Monte Carlo for the first time and Chiron again scored points and at 56 became the oldest driver to compete in a Formula 1 Grand Prix. It was not until 1957, when Fangio won again, that the Grand Prix saw a double winner. Between 1954 and 1961 Fangio's former Mercedes colleague, Stirling Moss, went one better, as did Trintignant, who won the race again in 1958 driving a Cooper. The 1961 race saw Moss fend off 3 works Ferrari 156s and a year-old privateer Rob Walker Racing Team Lotus 18, to take his third Monaco victory. Graham Hill's era. Britain's Graham Hill won the race 5 times in the 1960s and became known as King of Monaco, and Mr. Monaco. He first won in 1963, and then won the next 2 years. In the 1965 race he took pole position and led from the start, but went up an escape road on lap 25 to avoid hitting a slow back marker. Rejoining in 5th place, Hill set several new lap records on the way to winning. The race was also notable for Jim Clark's absence, and for Paul Hawkins' Lotus ending up in the harbour. A similar incident was included in the 1966 film Grand Prix. Hill's teammate, Briton Jackie Stewart, won in 1966 and New Zealander Denny Hume won in 1967, but Hill won the next 2 years, the 1969 event being his final Formula 1 championship victory, by which time he was a double Formula 1 world champion. Track alterations, safety and increasing business interests. By the start of the 1970s, efforts by Jackie Stewart saw a few events cancelled because of safety concerns. For the 1969 event, Armco barriers were placed at specific points for the first time in the circuit's history. Before that, the circuit's conditions were virtually identical to everyday civilian use. If a driver went off, he would crash into whatever was next to the track. And in Alberto Ascari and Paul Hawkins' cases, the harbour water, Because the concrete road the course used had no Armco to protect the drivers from going off the track and into the Mediterranean. The circuit gained more Armco in specific points for the next two races, and by 1972, the circuit was almost completely Armco-lined. And for the first time in its history, the Monaco circuit was altered that year. The pits were moved next to the waterfront straight between the chicane and Tabak, and the chicane was moved further forward right before Tabak and was the junction point between the pits and the course. The course was changed again for the 1973 race. The Rainier 3 Nautical Stadium was constructed where the straight that went behind the pits was, and the circuit introduced a twisty section that went around the new swimming pool. This created space for a whole new pit facility. And in 1976 the course was altered yet again. The Saint Devote corner was made slower and a chicane was placed right before the pit straight. For the next two races, by the early 1970s, as Brabham team owner Bernie Ecclestone started to marshal the collective bargaining power of the Formula One Constructors Association, Monaco was prestigious enough to become an early bone of contention. Historically, the number of cars permitted in a race was decided by the race organizer, in this case the ACM, which had always set a low number of around 16. In 1972 Ecclestone was starting to negotiate deals which relied on FOCA guaranteeing at least 18 entrants for every race. A standoff over this issue left the 1972 race in jeopardy until the ACM gave in and agreed that 26 cars could participate, the same number permitted at most other circuits. 2 years later, in 1974, the ACM managed to get the numbers back down to 18. Because of its tight confines, slow average speeds and punishing nature, Monaco has often thrown up unexpected results. In the 1982 race, Rennes copywriter Arnoux led the first 15 laps, before retiring. Alain Prost then led until 4 laps from the end, when he spun off on the wet track, hit the barriers and lost a wheel, giving Riccardo Patrese the lead. Patrese himself spun with only a lap and a half to go, letting Didier Pironi through to the front, followed by Andrea de Cesaris. On the last lap, Pironi ran out of fuel in the tunnel, but de Cesaris also ran out of fuel before he could overtake. In the meantime, Patrese had bump-started his car and went through to score his first Grand Prix win. In 1983 the ACM became entangled in the disagreements between FAR Copyright DAO Copyright Ration International du Sport Automobile and FOCA. The ACM, with the agreement of Bernie Ecclestone, negotiated an individual television rights deal with ABC in the United States. This broke an agreement enforced by FISA for a single central negotiation of television rights. Jean-Marie Ballester, president of FISA, announced that the Monaco Grand Prix would not form part of the Formula One World Championship in 1985. The ACM fought their case in the French courts. They won the case and the race was eventually reinstated. Prost-Senna era. For the decade from 1984 to 1993 the race was won by only 2 drivers, arguably the 2 best drivers in Formula One at the time, Frenchman Prost and Brazilian Ayrton Senna. Prost, already a winner of the support race for Formula 3 cars in 1979, took his first Monaco win at the 1984 race. The race started 45 minutes late after heavy rain. Prost led briefly before Nigel Mansell overtook him on lap 11. Mansell crashed out 5 laps later, letting Prost back into the lead. On lap 27, Prost led from Ayrton Senna's Toleman and Stefan Belov's Tyrrell. Senna was catching Prost and Belov was catching both of them. However, on lap 31, the race was controversially stopped with conditions deemed to be undrivable. Later, FISA fined the clerk of the course, Jackie Ickx, $6,000 and suspended his license for not consulting the stewards before stopping the race. The drivers received only half of the points that would usually be awarded, as the race had been stopped before 2/3 of the intended race distance had been completed. Prost won 1985 after Polasita. Senna retired with a blown Renault engine in his Lotus after over-revving it at the start, and Michel Alboreto in the Ferrari retook the lead twice, but he went off the track at Saint Devote, where Brazilian Nelson Piquet and Italian Riccardo Patrese had a huge accident only a few laps previously and oil and debris littered the track. Prost passed Alberitu, who retook the Frenchman, and then he punctured a tyre after running over bodywork debris from the Piquet-Patrese accident, which dropped him to fourth. He was able to pass his Roman countrymen Andrea de Cesaris and Leo de Angelis, but finished second behind Prost. The French Prost dominated 1986 after starting from pole position, a race where the Nouvelle chicane had been changed on the grounds of safety. Senna holds the record for the most victories in Monaco, with 6, including 5 consecutive wins between 1989 and 1993, as well as 8 podium finishes in 10 starts. His 1987 win was the first time a car with an active suspension had won a Grand Prix. He managed to win this race after Briton Nigel Mansell in a Williams Honda went out with a broken exhaust. His win was very popular with the people of Monaco, and when he was arrested on the Monday following the race, for riding a motorcycle without wearing a helmet, he was released by the officers after they realized who he was. Senna dominated 1988, and was able to get ahead of his teammate Prost while the Frenchman was held up for most of the race by Austrian Gerhard Berger in a Ferrari. By the time Prost got past Berger, he pushed as hard as he could and set a lap some 6 seconds faster than Senna's, at which the Brazilian panicked. He then set 2 fastest laps, and while pushing as hard as possible, he bit the barrier at the Portier corner and crashed into the Armco separating the road from the Mediterranean. Senna was so upset that he went back to his Monaco flat and was not heard from again. Prost went on to win for the 4th time. Senna dominated 1989 while Prost was stuck behind backmarker has-been René Arnoux and others. The Brazilian also dominated 1990 and 1991. At the 1992 event, Nigel Mansell, who had won all 5 races held to that point in the season, took pole and dominated the race in his Williams FW14B Renault. However, with 7 laps remaining, Mansell suffered a loose wheel nut and was forced in the pits, emerging behind Ayrton Senna's McLaren Honda, who was on worn tyres. Mansell, on fresh tyres, set a lap record almost 2 seconds quicker than Senna's and closed from 5.2 to 1.9 seconds in only 2 laps. The pair duelled around Monaco for the final 4 laps, but Mansell could find no way past, finishing just 0.2 of a second behind the Brazilian. Senna had a poor start to the 1993 event. He crashed in practice and qualified 3rd behind pole sitter Prost and the German rising star Michael Schumacher. The Brazilian Senna was again fortuitous to win in 1993 after getting to the first corner in 3rd behind Prost and Schumacher. Prost had to serve a time penalty for jumping the start and Schumacher retired with hydraulic active suspension problems, and Senna won in front of the late Graham Hill's son Damon. It was Senna's 5th win at Monaco, equaling Graham Hill's record. After Senna took his 6th win at the 1993 race, breaking Graham Hill's record for most wins at the Monaco Grand Prix, runner-up Damon Hill commented that if my father was around now, he would be the first to congratulate Ayrton. Modern times, the 1994 race was an emotional and tragic affair. It came 2 weeks after the tragic race at Imola where Austrian Roland Ratzenberger and Senna both died from massive head injuries from on-track accidents on successive days. But during the Monaco event, German Karl Wendlinger had an appalling accident in his Sauber in the tunnel. He went into a coma and was to miss the rest of the season. Some feared for his life. But the German Schumacher won the 1994 Monaco event easily. The 1996 race saw Michael Schumacher take pole position before crashing out on the first lap after being overtaken by Damon Hill. Hill led the first 40 laps before his engine expired in the tunnel. Gene Ailsey took the lead but suffered suspension failure 20 laps later. Olivier Panis, who started in 14th place, moved into the lead and stayed there until the end of the race, being pushed all the way by David Coulthard. It was Panis' only win, and the last for his Ligier team. Only 3 cars crossed the finish line, but 7 were classified. 7-time world champion Schumacher would eventually win the race 5 times, matching Graham Hill's record. Schumacher also holds the current lap record with a 1:14.439, set in 2004. In his appearance at the 2006 event, he attracted criticism when, while provisionally holding pole position and with the qualifying session drawing to a close, He stopped his car at the Rasgas hairpin, blocking the track and obliging competitors to slow down. Although Schumacher claimed it was the unintentional result of a genuine car failure, the FIA disagreed and he was sent to the back of the grid. In July 2010, Bernie Ecclestone announced that a 10-year deal had been reached with the race organizers, keeping the race on the calendar until at least 2020. Circuit. The Circuit de Monaco consists of the city streets of Monte Carlo and La Condamine, which includes the famous harbour. It is unique in having been held on the same circuit every time it has been run over such a long period. Only the Italian Grand Prix, which has been held at Auto Romo Nazionale Monza during every Formula One regulated year except 1980, has a similarly lengthy and close relationship with a single circuit. The race circuit has many elevation changes, tight corners, and a narrow course that makes it one of the most demanding tracks in Formula One racing. As of 2015, 2 drivers have crashed and ended up in the harbour, the most famous being Alberto Ascari in 1955. Despite the fact that the course has had minor changes several times during its history, it is still considered the ultimate test of driving skills in Formula One, and if it were not already an existing Grand Prix, it would not be permitted to be added to the schedule for safety reasons. Even in 1929, La Vie Automobile magazine offered the opinion that any respectable traffic system would have covered the track with signposts left, right and center. Triple Formula One champion Nelson Piquet was fond of saying that racing at Monaco was like trying to cycle round your living room, but added that a win here was worth 2 anywhere else. Notably, the course includes a tunnel. The contrast of daylight and gloom when entering and exiting the tunnel presents challenges not faced elsewhere, as the drivers have to adjust their vision as they emerge from the tunnel at the fastest point of the track and brake for the chicane in the daylight. The fastest ever lap was set by Camira Currency Paragraph Nen in qualifying for the 2006 Grand Prix, at 1:13.532. Viewing areas During the Grand Prix weekend, spectators crowd around the Monaco circuit. There are a number of temporary grandstands built around the circuit, mostly around the harbour area. The rich and famous arrive on their boats and the yachts in the harbour fill with spectators. Balconies around Monaco become viewing areas for the race too. Many hotels and residents cash in on the bird's-eye views of the race. Grand Prix organizers Automobile Club de Monaco officially voted the Emano Palace penthouse the best view of the Monaco Grand Prix, a unregistered trademark. Organization. The Monaco Grand Prix is organized each year by the Automobile Club de Monaco, which also runs the Monte Carlo Rally and the Junior Monaco Kart Cup. It differs in several ways from other Grands Prix. The practice session for the race is held on the Thursday preceding the race instead of Friday. This allows the streets to be open to the public again on Friday. Until the late 1990s, the race started at 3:30 p.m. local time, an hour and a half later than other European Formula One races. In recent years, the race has fallen in line with the other Formula One races for the convenience of television viewers. Also, earlier the event was traditionally held on the week of Ascension Day. It is now held on what is Memorial Day weekend in the United States. For many years, the numbers of cars admitted to Grand Prix was at the discretion of the race organizers. Monaco had the smallest grids, ostensibly because of its narrow and twisting track. Only 18 cars were permitted to enter the 1975 Monaco Grand Prix, compared to 23 to 26 cars at all other rounds that year. The erecting of the circuit takes 6 weeks, and the removal after the race takes 3 weeks. There is no podium as such at the race. Instead, a section of the track is closed after the race to act as parc fermé copyright, a place where the cars are held for official inspection. The first 3 drivers in the race leave their cars there and walk directly to the royal box where the podium ceremony is held, which is considered a custom for the race. The trophies are handed out before the national anthems of the driver and team are played, as opposed to other Grands Prix where the anthems are played first. Fame. The Monaco Grand Prix is widely considered to be one of the most important and prestigious automobile races in the world, alongside the Indianapolis 500-mile race and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. These three races are considered to form a triple crown of the three most famous motor races in the world. Graham Hill is the only driver to have won the Triple Crown, by winning all three races. The practice session for Monaco overlaps with that for the Indianapolis 500, and the races themselves sometimes clash. As the two races take place on opposite sides of the Atlantic Ocean and form part of different championships, it is difficult for one driver to compete effectively in both during his career. Juan Pablo Montoya, who won the Monaco Grand Prix in 2003 and the Indianapolis 500 in 2000 and 2015, is the only driver still racing in 2015 who has won two of the three races and thus is the closest to completing the Triple Crown. In awarding its first gold medal for motorsport to Prince Rainier III, the FAR Copyright d'Art Copyright Ration Internationale de l'Automobile characterized the Monaco Grand Prix as contributing an exceptional location of glamour and prestige to motorsport. It has been run under the patronage of three generations of Monaco's royal family, Louis II, Rainier III and Albert II, all of whom have taken a close interest in the race. A large part of the principality's income comes from tourists attracted by the warm climate and the famous casino, but it is also a tax haven and is home to many millionaires, including several Formula One drivers. Monaco has produced only three native Formula One drivers, Louis Chiron, Andrea Copyright and Olivier Beretta, but its tax status has made it home to many drivers over the years, including Gilles Villeneuve and Ayrton Senna. Of the 2006 Formula One contenders, several have property in the Principality, including Jenson Button and David Coulthard, who was part owner of a hotel there. Because of the small size of the town and the location of the circuit, drivers whose races end early can usually get back to their apartments in minutes. Ayrton Senna famously retired to his apartment after crashing out of the lead of the 1988 race. Winners = multiple winners = embolded drivers are still competing in the Formula One Championship. Multiple winners = a pink background indicates an event which was not part of the Formula One World Championship. A cream background indicates an event which was part of the pre-war European Championship. Embolder teams are competing in the Formula One Championship in the current season. By year = a pink background indicates an event which was not part of the Formula One World Championship. A cream background indicates an event which was part of the pre-war European Championship. Previous circuit configurations. See also, Triple Crown of Motorsport. References. Sources, Ketlewell, Mike. Monaco, Road Racing on the Riviera, in Northey, Tom, editor. World of Automobiles, Volume 12. Pages 1381 a Euro 4. London, Orbis, 1974. External links, Automobile Club de Monaco, Grand Prix de Monaco, Monaco Grand Prix statistics, satellite map of Monaco Grand Prix track, Monte Carlo Formula One statistics.